All right, Mayor Ortiz, you're all set to go.
Great. Thank you. I'm calling the meeting to order, a city council meeting for March 21st, 2022. And with that, we will go to our Pledge of Allegiance. I've asked our city librarian, Brad McCauley, to lead us, please.
If everybody could stand if you're able to and pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I'll bring it to our city clerk for a roll call.
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Present. Here.
Councilmember Coulson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Here.
Mayor Ortiz.
Here. And then we'll move on to a report from closed session. Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no reportable actions.
Thank you very much. And I do have a number of upcoming events. So let me read what I got from our Parks and Rec Director. The city of Burlingame is excited to unveil the city's first permanent public artwork located in Washington Park on Wednesday, March 23rd at 11:30 a.m. entitled Anson Burlingame, The Principles of Eternal Justice. The artwork consists of two large sculptural portals, 6 benches with inspirational quotes on courage, tolerance, and equality, and the pathway mural representing the bringing together of different people. The artwork is intended to convey the city's namesake, Anson Burlingame's values and his lifelong fight for equality and peoples and nations. So that one again, Wednesday, March 23rd at Washington Park. Second, we have the spring break camps, which begin on Monday, March 28th. There's still time to sign up for 7 different types of camps through the Parks and Rec Department. Then leader in training applications. This year, LITs will volunteer from 10 to 2 on assigned days of the week to may include time volunteering in adventure camps, senior programs, park lunch adventures. For more information, contact Nicole Houghton at nhoughton@burlingame.org. Applications are due Friday, April 15th by 5 p.m. We are recruiting senior community members to be part of our senior advisory committee to help ensure programs meet the senior community's need. For more information, call Nicole Houghton at nhoughton@burlingame.org. Puzzle Palooza is on Thursday, March 24th from 8 to 2 p.m. Challenge yourself with a day of jigsaw puzzle fun. We'll provide the puzzles and you provide the brain power. Free event for active adults. Again, March 24th from 8 to 2. Active Adults First Book Club for Burlingame Parks and Recreation Department will be on Thursday, April 21st from 2 to 3:30 at the Portables at 1010 Burlingame Avenue, discussing Apples Never Fall by Leanne Moriarty. Again, Thursday, April 21st from 2 to 3:30. Active Adult Trip to Wine Country and Hop Monk Tavern on Wednesday, April 6th from 8:30 to 4. Register at the Parks and Rec website or call 650-558-7301. And that is again, April 6th from 8:30 to 4. And then from our friends in the library, we have Spring Break Mini Craft on March 28th, from March 28th to April 1st. Kids are invited to join members of the library's Teen Advisory Board for mini craft camps each day of the week from Monday, March 28th through Friday, April 1st. From 1 to 2 p.m. Please see the library's website for registration information. Colleagues, anybody have any other upcoming events? And having none, then we will move on to our presentation. So we have a presentation for Burlingame and Millbrae Sea Level Rise Shoreline Area Protection and Enhancement Project Update. And I believe is Mr. Len Matterman, Chief Executive Officer of One Shoreline. Is that correct? Mr. Matterman, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's good to be here. It's good to see all of you. I'll just ask if Syed or Lisa want to make any comments before I start.
Nothing from me except to say we appreciate you being here. And I looked at the slides ahead of time, and I think this is a really great project. And so we're excited for you to tell our community about it. Thank you.
I just wanted to add that thank you to Len for coming here to make this presentation. And Len and his team are doing a great job in helping Burlingame prepare for sea level rise in the coming years.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I will share screen if that's okay. And I have a brief presentation. Hopefully you can see the slide deck at this point. So I have a brief presentation. I'll go quickly through what we've talked about before, in case some of the people in this meeting haven't kind of gotten an overview of what we're up to in general. And then I'll dive into the status of our project with Burlingame and Millbrae and the next steps. So again, I'm Len Matterman. I run the San Mateo County Flood and Sea Level Rise Resiliency District. We're also known as One Shoreline. And we have the great privilege of having one of your council members on our board, Donna Colson. And so thank you to Councilmember Colson for her very active support of One Shoreline. So here's the few slides on the background. As many of you know, San Mateo County has a great vulnerability to sea level rise, and that's based on a report done by San Mateo County itself in 2018, but also reports such as what we're seeing here on the bottom left from Caltrans that shows, if you see Highway 101 there in red, 80% of Highway 101 is in the sea level rise zone, as well as other key Caltrans assets. And then there were other studies, like the study from Stanford University recently in July of last year that looked at residential homes and how they relate to median income. San Mateo County has most vulnerability. And then there was a civil grand jury report regarding this issue. So in summary, we're the most vulnerable county in the state in terms of population, number of homes, property value, et cetera. Go back here. So the way I describe the issue to people who aren't right on the coast or right on the bayside, who may say, well, how does sea level rise impact me? It really does affect anybody who drives on Highway 101, flushes a toilet east of Skyline Boulevard, depends on fresh water from Hetch Hetchy, depends on electricity or natural gas from PG&E. Certainly if they work or live or go to school east of the Caltrain tracks, and then also if they value our bay marshes and coastal beaches, which we've already seen substantial impacts from climate change. And it's not a far off or hypothetical issue. Here are pictures that I took during a king tide in January of this year. You see in the area of Oyster Point, water surrounding the building of the Harbor Master, about 0.7 of a mile upstream by the Costco in South San Francisco, water right up to the edge of the parking lot, and then over a mile upstream in San Bruno, you see water, and this is obviously not a rainy day. So One Shoreline was created in January 1 of 2020, established then so as the first independent California agency focused on climate change, water-related impacts. We think of climate change in terms of, we take a holistic view to climate change impacts in terms of geography, aligning and connecting projects across jurisdictions, the threats, more extreme storms, of course, sea level rise, and the objectives, in addition to reducing threats, turning waterways and shorelines from liabilities into assets, utilizing natural infrastructure and public and private lands. Our priorities for this year and next are to complete our first construction project, which is actually substantially complete, other than just a PG&E power hookup, to protect mobile home parks in the south part of our county, to advance multi-jurisdictional projects like the one I'll talk about today, and to work with cities and developers so that public and private infrastructure and development can function for decades. And this relates to Burlingame's really groundbreaking work on your zoning ordinance to become the first community in the Bay Area to incorporate sea level rise into a zoning ordinance. So congratulations and thank you for your work and leadership on that. Develop a source of long-term stable funding. As many of you know, we are exploring with the county a potential countywide parcel tax related to the climate risks related to water and wildfire, both. And we could talk more about that if that's desired. Here's a quick snapshot of kind of the county, the Pacific Ocean's on the left, San Francisco Bay on the right. Our general strategy is to align and connect protection and enhancement of the entire shoreline by developing new multi-jurisdictional projects like the one in Burlingame and Millbrae, and connecting that into existing efforts like San Francisco Airport's efforts, or connecting Redwood, a project we would lead in Redwood Shores to a Foster City effort, that kind of thing. And in that way, really knit together protection for the entire Bay shoreline. We also do work on the coast, and we're pursuing, or we actually launched a project in the Pillar Point area, and we're pursuing with Half Moon Bay a project in the Kehoe watershed and supporting the city of Pacifica's efforts. Okay, so now to dive into Burlingame specifically, I think it's worth noting that key for early private sector participation along your shoreline was really leadership in three areas. One, as I mentioned, city leadership that was eager to maximize opportunities for long-term planning through your zoning ordinance. And the zoning ordinance that was approved in December of last year, a few months back. At the same time, there are opportunities for major new developments to contribute to adaptation solutions. And at the same time as that, there's a regional project being developed by One Shoreline with the support of the city of Burlingame and the city of Millbrae, and the city of and South San Francisco, sorry, and San Francisco International Airport. And so it really was a confluence of these three key items: the zoning ordinance, major new developments, and opportunities for adaptation right away in the context of this regional project. And there are other areas of the Bay shoreline that have these three things going on at the same time as well. And we're working with the two cities where that's really happening right now, East Palo Alto and South San Francisco. But you folks led the way, which is great. Okay, so now dive into the project. And here's a bit of background on the project. San Francisco International Airport, as I mentioned, has its shoreline protection program. It's been working on that for many years. And last year, they began the CEQA document for that project. There are many different reaches. You see, it's hard to read perhaps, but this says reach 3, this says reach 5, reach 6. So reaches essentially mean different lengths of the shoreline where they are looking at different treatments. One of those reaches is the reach along Highway 101, a very long stretch of airport property. And they have two options dealing with that area. One is to tie into adjacent protection, like in Millbrae and on the north side in South San Francisco. And the other option, which is much more expensive, is to develop west side protection along the highway. And so we, at the same time that this San Francisco International Airport was working on this, you all were completing a study of adaptation along your shoreline in December of 2019. You completed it, and Millbrae, just to the north, completed a similar study in April of 2020. So when One Shoreline was created in January of 2020, after that, the cities began discussing with One Shoreline the idea of a unified project that would tie into San Francisco Airport. And Councilwoman Colson was very instrumental, along with Syed Martuza, in kind of bridging that conversation, and we really appreciate it. So what the project, what the partners would share on the project is meeting Burlingame, Millbrae, One Shoreline, and San Francisco Airport share common objectives and assumptions, technical information, environmental mitigations, costs, utilizes public and private lands to meet objectives. Our objectives are sea level 10 feet above today's high tide, which is also equal to the FEMA 100-year tide with 6 feet of sea level rise. Okay, so now I'll describe the status of the project. In FY fiscal year 2021-22, the state budget included $8 million to One Shoreline. It was a direct appropriation through this State Coastal Conservancy. So we spent the fall of 2021 negotiating with the Coastal Conservancy and proposing that half of that money be utilized for this project, for design and CEQA for this project. So in January of 2022, the One Shoreline Board voted to use half of those funds, $4 million, to develop a shovel-ready project along the shoreline in the affected creeks of the two cities, Burlingame and Millbrae. Also that month, we released a RFP for a consultant team to complete data collection, design, CEQA, potentially NEPA, which is the federal equivalent of CEQA, and permit applications. And we have from the state 4 years to utilize these funds. So by January 31, 2026. In March of 2022, this month, we, along with staff from Burlingame and Millbrae, interviewed the consultant teams that responded to the RFP. And next Monday, a week from today, I hope and anticipate proposing to the One Shoreline Board a consultant contract to begin that work. Okay, now I'll talk about the next steps. Over the next 4 years, between now and the end of January 2026, One Shoreline and the cities, Burlingame and Millbrae, will identify the total cost to complete design, CEQA, and permitting, close funding gaps through cost sharing with the cities and with San Francisco Airport and One Shoreline, and grants that we will still look to secure. Develop a plan to finance construction of the project as part of this process as we complete design, CEQA, and permitting. Conduct outreach to the public, to developers and key stakeholders, and with the support of your planning folks, principally Kevin Gardner. We've been meeting with some of the prominent developers along the shoreline that have either proposed already or are looking to propose projects either along Creek or more likely along San Francisco Bay. And update the city councils and the One Shoreline Board. So these are some of the key activities that I'll be focusing on with our staff and with your staffs. And that concludes the presentation. I'd be glad to answer questions. And I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mederman. That's very comforting to know that we're working on this. So thank you so much. Colleagues, any questions for Mr. Mederman? And I see Vice Mayor Brownrigg, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Len, for the great work at One Shoreline. And I won't repeat earlier comments except to say that I think the county getting ahead of this is, so critical for all the obvious reasons. I guess so thank you for laying out the timetable, which, we all know how long, we're all going through redesigning El Camino Real, which in the scheme of things is a much simpler, design than trying to protect the entire bayside. And that's going to take years. So the length of time is something I can sort of get my hands around. The part that I'm finding a little tough to understand is how the different funding sources should come together. And, maybe we don't have answers right this minute, but we have developers right this minute. And we chatted a little bit about this before, but how does one try to make sure, first of all, that it's fair? So just because you have a project doesn't mean you should bear the entire cost of everything. And yet not put off, you see what I'm trying to wrestle with? It's just the staging of the finance, because what you're talking about is financing all of the work up through permitting. And what we have are people who are prepared to actually start building. So I worry a little bit, and we have chatted about this before, but I wanted to, ask you on the record, like, how do we make those two timetables fit together?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It is highly complex. And so, what you've identified is a scenario that a developer is most of them are at the beginning stages of planning their projects, which is good. There are a few that are farther along, one of which we met with recently. The Sphere project is a little farther along, but we had a very good conversation with them about how their work could and we think should fit in with the regional effort. And we're having that same conversation with the other developers who are at slightly earlier stages of pre-application or just just submitted an application, let's say. So it is complicated, and it's our job at One Shoreline and at the cities to make sure that the consultant team for our project that's moving forward with design and CEQA is in close communication with the developer teams, so that one of us will get out ahead of the other. And that's okay as long as we have good communication, so that the one that gets out ahead isn't making assumptions that aren't going to be consistent with the broader plan. I think that's the key, and we'll just have to work at it. And my idea is. Or our idea is that the developers, if they're ready to go and build something, then they should be able to build it. But it should meet the requirements of the city and of the regional project. And that has been made plain to the developers with the big help of Mr. Gardner and others at the city and some of you all. and so I feel like there's no sense that there's any hidden anything. The developers know straight up that the zoning ordinance exists, that the project exists, and that they need to work with us. And it's in their interests. Developers like certainty, much prefer that to uncertainty. And so the more that we can do to help them in that way, I think we'll all be better off.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go with Councilmember Beach next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Menneman, for the terrific presentation. It is just fantastic to see the level of regional coordination and thoughtfulness. So appreciate your leadership. Councilmember Coulson, way to go. Just leading the charge on this to really make it a great project. So just wanted to thank all of you and encourage, I'm excited to hear that as we're beginning kind of the CEQA process, there'll be certainly public outreach, but I think a key component, particularly as we have to consider all hands on deck to finance these things, to make sure the public is really brought along. So I love that there's going to be a lot of outreach, and however we can support here at the city, even beyond the CEQA process, to get as much information out through environmental groups and other interested parties. I think it's so important that we bring the public along in understanding of what a big lift this is. So thank you all for your great work. Very exciting.
Thank you. Councilmember Coulson.
Thank you. So just wanted to sort of circle back to Vice Mayor Brownrigg's question, and also point out that this sort of layering of financial strategies to make this all work is going to start, the base of it's going to start with, the people that are ahead are going to have to be doing it with either their own capital. In the case of big institutional investors developing, they're probably going to have to be the ones. And because we upzoned that area, there is value. There's value in the land that we created that I think people have understood now, that this is how we're going to, we have to use some of that money, that gain that was given because of enhanced zoning, that some of that's going to have to be reinvested back into their own protections. And these developers are now really starting to get their heads wrapped around it. They're starting to understand, they're appreciating that we're going to help them develop the plans, the costs, and that they're going to be consistent with everyone in the area. And they start to see it as a little bit of fairness, which I think is fine. And then we're going to have to layer on that, grants, and we're going to have to layer like the 4 million we just got. We're also going to have to layer on, the potential of, maybe possibly even a countywide parcel tax that we've been sort of discussing. And you may have seen some of that in the newspapers. I'm a little concerned that some people haven't done their due diligence to really understand what this is and how it works. But I think we're so fortunate in this county that we have such a collaborative group of cities and a county that is so overarching and supportive that we're going to be able to potentially put something together that, you know, can really reach out. Because my bigger concern, I'm concerned about Burlingame, but I'm also very concerned about our very low income neighborhoods that are very vulnerable and won't be able to finance this. And if we can't fix them and we just fix us, we haven't solved the problem. So I think some of these discussions, of which our wonderful Len Matterman will be hopefully articulating out to the public in the future, along with the Board of Supervisors, that people will be open-minded and that they will listen and try to understand how critical those are, not only for flooding and sea level rise, but also fire. And then just my final comment is I was meeting with another city up in Marin County this morning, and I really began to understand, I mean, they're struggling with all of these same issues that we are. And it really made me understand and feel so fortunate to have leadership, you know, of the county and of One Shoreline and the support of, you know, the grant that Assemblyman Mullen worked on, and, you know, Senator Becker, and all the support we're getting from top down to do this, because that's not going on in every single county around the Bay. And as Councilwoman Beach points out, we are really, really fortunate to have such an esteemed and collaborative group of elected officials working together. And I know on transit, you get to see it every day, but it's nice to now see it translating into you know, the sea level rise conversation.
Thank you, Councilmember Coulson. Councilmember O'Brien.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Matterman, for your presentation, full of good, you know, information. I actually did not have a question, but I just wanted to emphasize, I think, the importance of the education of all this to the community and regionally, because as Councilmember Coulson has mentioned, you know, it's not just one city. We have to look at this holistically because everyone affects the other adjacent city. And so it's very important that we are all on board. And it's also important too to remember, you know, you may have, you know, residential areas and say, oh, well, this doesn't affect me. Well, it actually does, because we rely on so much revenue on our Bayshore with our hotels and businesses over there, that, you know, that revenue is utilized toward all the quality services that we provide here in Burlingame, and that's the same in, you know, many areas throughout the peninsula. So as I mentioned before, this is really important to educate the community and just take that holistic approach that, you know, all of us need to be together on this one, because if we're not, it's just not going to work. And I think the more collaborative we work together, which I think, you know, San Mateo County is pretty good with, you know, doing all along. But I do think we need to emphasize the importance of this right now. And especially too, when we have so many developers that are interested in building in these areas. So it's important to protect those businesses. But in general, it really protects us all. And it's not just one entity that we're protecting.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Brien. I agree. This is a regional effort and all hands need to be on deck. And I think communication is going to be a key to accomplishing that. And I think we are blessed with a good set of elected officials who are all interested in pushing this agenda forward. But speaking of communication, I think we're going to open it up for comments from the public. Do we have any comments, Megan?
I don't see any hands raised. And let me check the email. Nope, we don't have any emails. Oh, we do have a hands raised now. I spoke too soon. We'll start with Traffic Safety Parking Commission Chair, John Martos.
Great. Welcome, Mr. Martos.
Hi, good evening, Council. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Title's not necessary. Because I speak as a resident. I live in the area near Highway 101. And when I read this report, it's very disturbing to see how bad things could get with no intervention. So I'm very happy to see the proactive approach that council and the consultants are taking right now early to make this a reality. I've observed some things in Foster City with their seawall, if that's what they're building. It's pretty unsightly. And I used to spend a lot of time out in that area by the golf course and the San Mateo Bridge and enjoying the beauty of it, walking that trail. I would just say that I know this is going to be open for public comment and response as the project moves forward. And I'm happy to hear about that because I think with the right design work, things could be made very appealing out there. It may not, be to just mitigate risk. It may be an opportunity for an improvement of the bayfront. I'm no civil engineer, but is it possible to push the sea level back with the wall and open up more space at the bayfront? Things like that could really enhance the bayfront out there. So just my comments, what I've seen thus far in Foster City, and I'm encouraged by some of the opportunities in Burlingame. We've had some discussions in the Teaspoon about the Bay Trail and continuing the Bay Trail and enhancements to the Bay Trail and how those would be modified to not only make it a nicer Bay Trail, but also alleviate some of this sea rise or to mitigate against the sea rise. So I look at this as a great opportunity, and I'm looking forward in the future to an opportunity to comment on some particular design elements of this as a community member who lives in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martos.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to make any comments on that?
Yes, please.
Sure. Well, I just say thank you to your public commenter. Certainly, the aesthetics and the connectivity of the Bay shoreline is key to this project. I mean, first and foremost, it's a protection project, but hand in hand with that, as I mentioned in one of my slides, we're not just all about walling off people from water. We're also about creating assets, and we view the Bay shoreline as very much a key asset of Burlingame and other communities within San Mateo County. So rest assured, we're going to do everything we can to enhance the Bay shoreline, work with developers so that their sites enhance the Bay shoreline, and that's just a really key part of the project. If I can, Mr. Mayor, I'd also like to just say we probably will be back to you as we understand better the full costs of all the steps needed to get to a permittable shovel-ready project. As I said in the presentation, that One Shoreline is providing the kind of, let's say, first $4 million, but the cost to get there is higher than that. And so I wanted to just be clear that that there are future conversations about completing the funding, even just to get to the construction. And I know Vice Mayor Brownrigg was probably talking mostly about construction funding, but all of this is expensive work, and the private sector is part of it. But there's also a role for us and the cities and San Francisco Airport, I think, in getting us to that point. So I just wanted to kind of put that back on the radar. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Mayor, I see you, but I'm going to finish the public comment, so keep that thought, okay? Madam City Clerk, did we have another public comment?
Yes, I'll now unmute Sandra Lang. Go ahead, Sandra.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Ortiz and City Council. Thank you for being able to listen to this tonight. I also want to share Mayor Ortiz's comment that it's really reassuring. I think I was going to speak tonight about something else that needs protecting, but I want to really say that what I could hear is it's brought to life a risk that we know about and hear about, but in real terms of how this will actually be built. As you have pointed out, it's a complex process. I wanted to also mention tonight that something that I'm concerned about, which is another risk, which we all know, which is, the wildfire season is soon upon us. And
Ms. Lang, I'm going to ask you to please
Oh.
keep the comments to the agenda item that we're
I'm
discussing.
sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if when I could do that. All right, excuse me. So thank you.
And we do have public comment coming up that is for items that are not on the agenda, but so stand by, you have your opportunity. Madam City Clerk, is that all we have for public comment?
That is it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two very quick comments. One, I completely agree with Mr. Matterman. You can't build what you haven't planned. So planning and permitting is crucial, and absolutely it's the first step. So and understand that we have to pay for that too. So like that's not lost on any of us, I'm sure. But I didn't want to make it sound like I was only thinking about how do you build it completely. I mean, President Obama famously said during the Great Recession, when he was told like you've got to put money into the economy, put it into the shovel-ready projects, and he said, turns out there are no shovel-ready projects. It's like the worst thing ever, nothing's ready to go. So we're going to be ready to go. But my other comment is to Mr. Martos's comment, and it just prompts me to remind, all of us that this is a left-hand and right-hand thing. We need to reduce carbon in the environment. We know that. We don't want the sea level to rise. We know that. The problem is the world and our nation isn't moving fast enough. And I think what all the data shows, to Mr. Martos's point about unsightliness, is that we have to defend against sadly, a much higher projected sea level rise much sooner than experts were saying even a decade ago. And so it doesn't mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is the fact that we're planning for the worst doesn't mean we don't also argue for the best, and that we don't try to get carbon out of the environment and the rest of it. But we can't just wait and see if those steps will work. And that's the conundrum that this entire generation faces. It's too bad that the climate change policies aren't moving more quickly, I guess. Thank you. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Colleagues, any final comments? Councilmember Coulson.
Thank you. So just really quick, I want to elaborate on Vice Mayor's comment, because I actually think that is one of the problems with this problem, is that it's not evident. It's not, we're basically having to think about today for our grandchildren and our great grandchildren. And the real issue here is we can't continue to just ignore it and hope that and leave this huge legacy of problems, both on the carbon side and on the defenses. And my hope is that as we reduce carbon and we increase our defenses, that there will be a point in the future at which they will cross, and then the world will settle into some sort of an equilibrium. So I really appreciate that comment and the thought. And when people tell me today is not the right time for a tax, or today is not the right time to ask people to pay for it, there is never a right time, ever a right time to go and ask people to dig deep in their pockets and be responsible today, so that we spread the cost of this over multiple generations and not just leave it as a legacy for our children, who will be paying for many, many other things as well. So I think that's a really important point, and I hope everybody remembers it when we're talking about how to pay for this, that we have a responsibility today to start to chip away at this and start to make some headway.
Thank you for your comments. Any final comments from anyone else? With that, Mr. Matterman, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. We really appreciate it, and we're happy to be part of it. And we look forward to your future meetings. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And with that, we'll move on to public comment. And now hopefully Ms. Lang is still around and she can finish her thought. It was not nice to interrupt her. So this is for items that are not on the agenda, and we will not be able to respond, but we would love to hear you. So to you, Madam City Clerk.
Oh, I'm getting a promotion tonight. I'll start with Sandra. Go ahead, Sandra Lang.
Yes, thank you. My apologies for getting ahead of myself a little bit this evening. So I really would like to talk about another area of vulnerability, which has been touched upon, and as was pointed out in the previous comments, that I believe that Councilwoman Colson said, you know, we all hear about this, but only when we see it do we realize it's real. Well, I think that we know that the wildfire season will really soon be upon us, and I just dread to bring up that subject, but I want to suggest tonight, and something that I hope that the council and our community, you know, would consider, that we really need to prepare so that the public knows exactly how we plan to, you know, meet this. When we say wildfire threat in Burlingame, I'm sure you're probably all aware of the term of we're in an urban interface, which simply means actually that we're in an urban area that's close to flammable elements. One of the things that we've probably talked about here in the city is having people clean up their yards and have a major drive to eliminate excess vegetation. That's been shown to be a very important small step in reducing fire risks, particularly to residences in an interface. And combined with that is the concept of home hardening, which means essentially that's a form of removing your vegetation helps to provide a defensible space around your home. So in finishing tonight, I'd like to see more perhaps enforcement of cleaning up the brush that's right underneath our very own eyes. And finally, when you're looking at the budget, and as we all know, everything costs money, but to really maybe integrate into the budget some plan or help for residents to do this. It's an incentivization that will be for the good of all of us, because this is obviously, unfortunately, a real problem. And thank you very much for listening to me tonight about this.
Thank you, Ms. Lang.
We have another speaker. It's Davis Turner. Go ahead, Davis.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Davis Turner of Oak Grove Manor. I volunteer and work with Seamless Bay Area as a transit writer. I just wanted to highlight that the City of Oakland recently endorsed SB 917 last week, becoming the 21st public body to endorse it and the first city to do so. I guess I'll just leave some thoughts about SB 917. It was introduced by Joss Becker pretty recently and would require that transit agencies in the region work together to develop integrated fare structures, connected network plans, and better wayfinding systems, considering that there's 27 different agencies and there's often a lack of connectivity between them and hard for riders to navigate. So definitely a need for fare integration. And as a lot of the themes have been touched on already in this meeting, it certainly would help with making transportation more equitable, which is really good for the environment, and also those who do not drive, and also for someone like me who relies on transit to get to school. And considering that car usage is rising in the Bay Area, it's probably important that we work to reduce that. So I very much hope the city follows suit and endorses SB 917. And I've really appreciated all the hard work that every person on this council has done for cycling and public transit in the region. Burlingame has many transit connections, from Samtrans to commute.org shuttles to Caltrain. And considering the city is booming with new office space and commercial activity, I think the endorsement would certainly go a long way and would mean a lot to me, would mean a lot to thousands of other riders who rely on public transit, and would be an overall good for the community. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Turner.
And that is all of our public comment.
Very good. So with that, we will move on to item number 7, which is approval of the consent calendar. Colleagues, is there anybody who would like to pull any item on the consent agenda? And I don't see any raised hands, so we will bring it to the members of the public. Is there any member of the public who would like to have any item pulled? And Megan?
Sorry, there are no public comments asking for something to be pulled. Thank you.
Very good. And colleagues, if I could have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve.
I'm sorry, I think, was that Councilmember Beach? I heard two
I think there were
voices.
2 of us at once. I think Councilmember O'Brien.
Go ahead, Councilmember Beach.
All right, sure.
So we're going to
Move
we
to
have a
approve.
motion by Councilmember Beach, a second by Councilmember O'Brien. Madam City Clerk, if we could have a roll call.
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Colson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes, thank you. And with that, we'll move on to item number 9A, which is an introduction of an ordinance amending chapter 1320-01010 of the Burlingame Municipal Code to add stop signs at various locations. And I'm assuming that is my friend or Syed Murtuza, Director of Public Works. Mr. Murtuza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Good evening. I will review this item for you, and I have Transportation Engineer Michael Sai, who will assist in answering any questions Council has. So the recommendation tonight is to hold a public hearing to introduce the attached ordinance amending Chapter 13.20.01 of the Burlingame Municipal Code to add stop signs at Sanchez Avenue and Paloma Avenue, multi-way stop sign, Oak Road and Ansel Road intersection, again, multi-way stop sign there, Howard Avenue and Victoria Road, multi-way stop sign as well, and Hunt Drive and Alcazar Drive intersection. This is also a multi-way stop sign. And finally, Winchester Drive and Corbett Drive intersection, we are recommending one-way stop sign there. To introduce the ordinance, staff recommends the council follow the steps outlined in the staff report. And also, it's important to note that the proposed ordinance is not a project within the meaning of section 15378 of CEQA guidelines. And similarly, if it is, additionally, if it is determined to be a project under CEQA, it is going to be subjected to exemption under the CEQA guidelines 15061 parenthesis B subsection 3. Again, let me get into the background of these stop sign locations. I will not go into extreme details, but just give you a summarized overview, and then we'll yield for any questions from the council. City periodically receives requests for stop signs, and in order to determine the viability of these stop signs, staff follows through a sign warrant analysis process mandated by the state, and that includes the traffic accident data, intersection conditions, and other factors may include proximity to school, traffic controls at adjacent intersections, and as well as the right-of-way assignments, and among other things. These stop signs for these locations that I just mentioned were presented to the Traffic Safety Commission meeting on February 10th. After considerable discussion and input from the public, the Traffic Safety and Parking Commission concurred with staff's recommendation to install permanent stop signs as requested. In addition, the Traffic Safety Commission requested that a multi-way stop sign be revisited at Marco Polo Way and Davis Drive at the conclusion of the Burlingame Intermediate School Circulation Plan. Sanchez Avenue and Paloma Avenue intersection. We are requesting multi-way stop sign here. This intersection was evaluated and from a hourly traffic volume requirements, the intersection did not meet the warrant. However, because of the low traffic volume, but did satisfy the criterion that all approaches to the intersection average more than 2,000 vehicles that include bikes and pedestrians as well per day. And it also met the requirement for combination, the site visibility issue because of the narrow roadway with the parked cars. That was one of the criteria. And this was originally presented to Traffic Safety Commission in June 2020. And based on the recommendation of the Traffic Safety Commission, a pilot stop sign was installed for a trial period. which was ended, and staff made observations and reported no collisions. There were no reported collisions, and therefore staff is coming to you here to update the municipal code to include this in as a permanent stop sign in the municipal code. Oak Grove Avenue and Ansel Road intersection, multi-way stop sign is requested here. Oak Grove Avenue and Ansel Road intersection, both roads are considered low volume local roads and have satisfied requirements that all approaches to the intersection to have average more than 2,000 vehicles, bicycles and pedestrians per day, and then neither road has any existing traffic controls within 500 feet. And in addition, installation of a multi-way stop sign would improve the visibility issues related to slightly vertical roadway curve and heavy tree growth in that area. So that is Oak Grove. We'll go to Howard Avenue and Victoria intersection. Again, this is multi-way stop sign. This intersection was studied as part of Lion Hog project, which was completed in 2020, and a multi-way stop sign was implemented upon the council's approval of the Lion Hog traffic calming plan. Staff has been, again, the requirements of the state requirements have been met on this project as well, and it's working fine. The installation of the stop sign has improved traffic operations and improved walkability for pedestrians for accessing the park, Victoria Park. I'll move to Hunt Drive and Alcazar Drive intersection. Hunt Drive and Alcazar both have also satisfied the requirements for the visibility concern, where the ability to see conflicting traffic on an approach that is not sufficient to allow a road user to stop or yield in compliance with the normal right-of-way rule, if such a stopping or yielding is necessary. The intersection is at the top of the hill, and the existence of vertical curves may present visibility issues for vehicles on all approaches to the intersection. The installation of multi-way stop sign will improve traffic operations in sight lines and improve pedestrian safety as well. Finally, Winchester Drive and Corbett Drive intersection. We are requesting one-way stop sign here. Neither street meet the state guidelines for 300 vehicles per hour on the main street and 200 vehicles per hour on the minor street. However, a one-way stop sign installed on the south side of the street will inform motorists to come to a complete stop and gain better line of sight before entering the main street. Again, the visibility issue would be addressed by installing one-way stop sign. With that, I will pause for any questions before the council deliberates on the matter and then follows the steps regarding introducing the ordinance.
Colleagues, any questions from the director? And okay, the council or Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I realized what I wanted to make was a comment. Would you like to hold comments for after public comment?
Yes, if you don't mind, let's do that.
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah. I do, just for clarification for the public, let's just to make sure that everybody's clear. These intersections have been studied and discussed at the Traffic Safety Commission. We've had public input on these intersections. So we have had many meetings on these stop signs. Yes, Mr. Murtuza?
That is correct. This goes to Traffic Safety Commission, and also there are meetings with the neighborhood depending on number of affected residents involved, or sometimes some residents take an active role in making sure these things get done in a timely manner. And also sometimes they don't like certain outcome or solution, they lobby for different solutions. So there's a lot of back and forth in terms of public involvement in these projects.
And to your knowledge, were these meetings well attended?
I don't know the answer, but the people who are affected by these the intersections, they definitely are involved. That's what I.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Mr. Brownrigg,
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
I realized that one of my comments was a question, and that was, so I think it sounded to me, I just wanted to confirm that the discussion about the potential stop sign of Ray Drive and Marco Polo, that's been basically punted. Is that what happened there, for more thinking or something? And then I have a related, okay, that's fine. So it's still on the table. It's just there isn't a recommendation yet. Is that sort of the right description?
It is. It was recommended to the Traffic Safety Commission. However, the commission was not unanimous about going forward this time, because there is a plan by BIS which may change, which may require modification to the city's approach. So we wanted to wait for that to occur.
I'm sorry, can you clarify? I'm sorry, just a clarification of the plan by BIS is a traffic circulation plan?
It is a circulation plan, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Well, and so my related question, because when I first skimmed this, I just made, I mean, it was stupid. I made an assumption that we were talking about Ray Drive and Casada, which we're not, but I wonder why we're not. Why are we not thinking about Quesada, which to me feels, and has for a long time as a parent with students at BIS, a tough, very tough intersection without, not to have a stop sign?
I have to get back to you, Vice Mayor. These were the ones that were, there are many intersections throughout the city that were studied, and these were the ones that recommended. I don't have the details about what that intersection measured up to the requirements. So I'll have to get back to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Martuso.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Brien.
Thank you, through the mayor. I actually had the same question as Vice Mayor Brownrigg, because usually people talk to me about Wasada and that intersection, and it gets just so congested between drivers, walkers, and bicyclists. And so I do hope that it will be looked into futuristically. My other question was triggered when you said BIS is working on a circulation plan. Are they kind of keeping the city informed about what their potential plans are so that we can work with them and vice versa?
Yeah, through the mayor, yes, the staff and BIS officials meet on time-to-time basis, from time to time, looking at what's going on. Many of those come through the school liaison representatives and or through sometimes police department. And so there is involvement, meetings and requests go back and forth between staff and the BIS.
Okay, so one thought is maybe if we want to really explore that intersection, we might want to agendize it, or so we can discuss it further. But I want to bring it back to the ones we have on the agenda are the ones on this report. So if I could, any other questions for the director? With that, then we will open it to public comment, Madam City.
Before you do that, I'd ask that you have me read the title of the proposed ordinance.
Very good. Would somebody like to make that motion?
Have me read it first, and then we can waive further reading.
Madam City Clerk, if you please read the ordinance.
I would love to. An ordinance of the City of Burlingame amending Chapter 13.20.010 of the Burlingame Municipal Code to add stop signs at various locations in the city. CEQA determination exempt pursuant to state CEQA guidelines sections 15378 and 15061B3.
Motion to waive
further reading and introducing the proposed ordinance.
I'm going to go with Councilmember O'Brien, and Mr. Vice Mayor, were you seconding that motion?
Yep.
Very good. So we have a motion by Councilmember O'Brien and a second by Vice Mayor Brownrigg. Madam City Clerk, if we could do the roll call.
Councilmember O'Brien?
Yes.
Councilmember Beach?
Yes.
Councilmember Colson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg?
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz?
Yes. And with that, now can I do public comment?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have an email and I'll read that first. So this comes to us from Manito and he says, I write in support of the Paloma Sanchez stop signs as well as the Oak Grove Ansel stop signs, both of which I submitted a request to the city manager in 2015 who can confirm this. I provided the same exact justification that shows up on the staff report and slides for those stop signs to be installed a full 7 years ago. I noted the constrained visibility, the narrow streets, the fact that the streets are residential, the parking all the way to the corner, and the potential for injury, crashes, aka accidents. For some reason, the city council denied those requests then and in 2017, but are using the same justifications to finally put them in now in 2022. It would be helpful to hear what specifically changed between then and now. The streets are the same width, the visibility problems are the same, and the streets are still residential. Secondly, it would also be helpful to understand how some stop sign requests seem to be fast-tracked, so they are installed even before council is able to act on them. For example, Paloma Sanchez and Howard Victoria have been installed now for over a year, but only now are they getting the full legislative treatment. Is it possible for all stop signs to be done in this way, in the spirit of quick build and to address safety concerns by residents sooner than later? This nimbleness of implementation is something the city should celebrate and consider more. It is a welcome approach to making our streets safer in shorter time frame and cuts down on bureaucracy. If this can be done more and more, would be helpful to hear why these two intersections were done so fast and how the others can be done similarly. And our next comment comes from John Martos. So, John, you can now speak.
All right. Now I will speak as the chair of Teaspoon. So just to fill you in a little bit, thank you, Vice Mayor, about Ray Casada and Councilmember O'Brien. That is something that will be considered in the holistic circulation safety pattern as we look closer at that BIS walking and driving conditions there in the morning and in the afternoons when there's drop-offs and pickups. For your information, we did assign 2 members of Teaspoon to a committee to work with BIS and our traffic engineers to study traffic patterns in those areas. We did a couple of site surveys at Ray and Marco Polo, Davis and Marco Polo, to understand the patterns. I was there myself in the afternoon and I looked at the patterns, and there's something that probably should be done there. We want to make sure that we do the right thing and implement something that's going to make things better and not increase things like queuing at intersections, but somehow reduce the risk of potential student vehicle bicycle interactions in those real critical times in the morning and in the afternoons. So I wanted to reassure council that we're looking at that carefully. We have a couple of members on an active committee that are looking into those issues, and we will consider Ray and Casada as well and the entire circulation pattern there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martins. Do we have any other public comment?
I don't see any other hands up and I don't have any emails. So
very good. I'm going to bring it back to my colleagues for any comments. Councilmember Colson.
Thank you. So I appreciate the work of Teaspoon and the staff, and I'm going to support this motion for all of these stop signs. But I do, for members of the public who might be listening, I do want to, remind everybody that our staff sometimes gets, hundreds of requests for stop signs and traffic changes. And there's just so many things that are inundating our public works all the time. And so, I had an issue in my neighborhood recently and sent it off to Lisa and Syed. I was happy to get a response back to the person who sent it in, and I just passed it along, got an immediate response back. The amount of research and data that we're collecting on a lot of these intersections, including traffic speeds and ability to sort of pinpoint and geo tracking we're looking at so we can see how fast cars are going. I was really impressed of that work, so we can highlight these sort of dangerous areas. And, you know, I do know our staff takes hours and hours and hours of times trying to respond to the public and develop, you know, a less of a gunshot type situation and more comprehensive. And it's hard. It's got to be hard to take into account all of these different commentary, many of which come from one or two individuals and require vast amounts of staff time. So I appreciate the public chipping in. I appreciate the public's patience. And I also appreciate the staff's willingness to change or be flexible, and the Teaspoon's ability to sort of condense and consolidate and make really firm and appropriate recommendations up to the council.
Thank you. I think that was an important comment because, yeah, we've all received concerns from citizens for one intersection or another. We're not ignoring you. There's just, we need to prioritize. So thank you for that, Councilmember Colson. Vice Mayor Brownrigg.
Thank you. I want to build on Council Member Colson's comment that I really, at least I put a ton of respect into both the Traffic and Safety Commission and our staff and the research they do. This is one of these issue areas where I think by the time it comes to council, it would, for me anyway, it would have to be a really dramatic outpouring of public comment to say no to a recommendation, because it's been through hearings, it's been through expertise. And so I've done this before, but I beg members of the public, don't wait until something comes to council on this type of roadway issue. Get the point across at the Traffic Safety and Parking Commission. That's the appropriate venue to wrestle with whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. So that's one comment. My more general comment, though, that I wanted to make to Director Murtuza is my thinking on this over the years has changed a little bit. I used to be very much in the mind of whatever the regs say, and keep traffic moving and don't let traffic queue and stuff. And I actually increasingly think we should adopt a slightly stricter standard for pedestrian and bike safety, which means leaning into more stop signs. And I just, it's a combination of things. It's the increasing parking on the streets, a point that Councilmember O'Brien has raised for many, many years, but it's an indisputable phenomenon for all of us who've lived in our neighborhoods. I mean, I used to be able to play touch football on my street with my kids. I can't do that anymore. There's too many cars parked. We want to have more room for bikes. There's going to be more people with ADUs, like them or not, they're coming, and so I just think, slowing people down, slowing cars down is not a bad thing. So for me anyway, when there's a 50-50 call, I would lean into doing the stop sign and not lean into how do we make sure cars can move faster through our residential neighborhoods. So I just wanted to share that kind of philosophy with Director Murtuza. It's not right or wrong. It's just sort of my sense of weighting these things and how our streets are, especially our residential streets, are changing. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments? And with that, I'm going to just finish with a quick comment. I didn't want to continue talking about that because it's not on the agenda, but it is my neighborhood. We are paralyzed every morning and every afternoon with the traffic at BIS. So look forward to seeing the traffic circulation plan. And but again, we talked about many different things. So with that, do we need a motion or is this just feedback? We do need a motion. So colleagues, anybody care to make a motion?
I'm not clear. Do we need a motion? I mean, I thought we gave guidance that isn't.
You do a motion to bring it back for a second.
Motion to bring it back.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to bring it back, and I think there's been enough input that staff knows if there need to be any changes, which I don't think there do.
Great.
So that's my motion. Thank you.
And I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion by Vice Mayor Brownrigg, a second by Councilmember Beach. Roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Colson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yes. Thank you for that. That was good conversation. And with that, we'll move on to item number 9B. Is a Proposition 218 public hearing and adoption of a resolution increasing solid waste rate by 5% on all accounts for calendar year 2022. And I'm not sure who is this our finance director? Please, finance, you, Scott. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council member. Sorry for the typo from the title there. So at the January 18th meeting, the City Council approved the resolution intend to hold tonight public hearing for the proposed solid waste rate increase. Tonight, the Council is asked to conduct a public hearing and determine whether a majority protest had been made. As noon today, we have received 202 protests. The City Clerk can report on if any additional protests received since then. Megan?
Nope, that's the number.
Great. The city has a total of 7,948 account as the time we send out the notice, and we mailed out 9,550 copy of notice to cover both the property owners as well as tenants on file. The protests that we saved do not constitute a majority. Staff recommend to adopt the resolution and approve the fee increase to be effective on April 1st, 2022. This concludes my staff report. I'm here to answer any question you may have. Back to
Thank you very much, Director Scott. With that, I bring it to my colleagues for any questions. Colleagues, I don't see any raised hands. So then we will open it to public. Madam City Clerk.
Don't have any emails and I see a hand up. Okay, so Josh.
Hi there. My name is Josh Shack. I'm a resident of Burlingame, born and raised here as well. I don't necessarily oppose the increase in rate, but my ongoing issue with the garbage rate plan is that there's no smaller bin offered. If you look at the San Mateo Recology website, they offer 20-gallon bins for every one of their service areas except Burlingame and West Bay. So it makes me think that it has to do with the contract rather than the technical ability of the trucks to pick up the bins. So I'm okay with you guys raising rates. I just think that there should also be an option for a smaller bin, mostly for environmental reasons. That I used to live in San Francisco and they made the smaller bin standard and they saw an uptick in their composting and recycling. And so if Burlingame is serious about its environmental mission, then I think that at the very least, you should offer the smaller bin, but maybe down the line, even opt people into it and encourage them to recycle and to compost. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shack. That was a very good comment. I don't know if somebody wants to respond to the question of the smaller bin. I don't know, Mr. Vice Mayor, if you have any history on that.
I can speak a little to it, Mr. Mayor. The cost of picking up, the fact is the cost of picking up any bin is basically the same. There is obviously the more refuse you have, the more that has to go to landfill. There's slightly higher costs associated with that. But the reason there's such a difference in the pricing between the two was to try to encourage people at the beginning to use small bins. And the thinking there was it will encourage people to put less into their black bins. And that will then divert more into recycling and organic composting. The reality is it didn't work that well. People would get the small bins, but then overfill them and stuff was falling out. And so, as we considered whether to go back to offering small bins, that was uppermost in our mind with respect to Burlingame. So we can revisit this, but there was this unfortunate, at least in our city, and maybe other cities have had better luck, the consequence of people sort of buying too small a bin and then overfilling it. And we get penalized pretty significantly if we have litter that goes into our storm drains. So that was part of the thinking.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you, Mr. Schack, for your comment. Were no other further public comment?
I don't see any more, and I have no emails. So I think we're
Very
safe to
good.
close the
We will
public hearing.
Close the public comment and we'll go to Councilmember Colson.
Sorry, my mute button wasn't tapping. So I also will just point out that the new state laws around composting are simply going to require us to recycle and compost more. So, you know, regardless of the size of the trash bin, you know, legally, we're going to all have to be thinking a lot more about that and moving it over. So, you know, maybe to the vice mayor's point, you know, and to city manager Goldman's point, we could, you know, ask that, you know, ask for observations, you know, when we're dumping, you know, are we getting like half the refuse that would fill the cans? So in other words, is overall, are the cans being filled far smaller, and we could move to something smaller? Because it's going to happen kind of naturally. And I, as someone who's seen people stomp all the trash in and then stomp on top. And then I think the other issue isn't just the trash coming out, but it's actually literally what I've seen sometimes other trucks are trying to dump it out of the little can and it will not come out. And then you have to put the can down. The guy has to get out of the truck. He has to sort of dislodge it. It creates this, you know, massive like sort of backlog throughout the system, and the critical path to get delivery doesn't happen, and people, then everything's lagging, and then all of a sudden I'm getting 20 calls saying they never made it to pick up my trash can, especially around multifamily residential, which were sometimes the last pickups. So I just don't want to do anything that's going to clog up the system right now, and hope we can focus on educating our public, and then when we do get the refuge down, then maybe we could consider moving to smaller cans.
Thank you, Councilmember Colson. That was a nice comment. Councilmember Beach.
No, I think it's a great conversation at such a time that staff thinks it's an appropriate conversation. I'd welcome you know, the anecdotal analysis is great too. And if staff has any other additional things we should consider, I think it'd be a worthwhile conversation into the future, especially with the changes that we're going to be embarking on. Thank you. And I've heard more than one resident you know, question this before. So I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have more thoroughly. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments? And having none, would any colleague care to make a motion to approve the, so the motion to...
I can make the very unpopular motion to increase the cost of our trash pickup and for now to the 5% and to just and maintain, you know, service as is.
I'd like to second that. I'm sorry, I just couldn't find the mute button fast enough.
I'm sorry, I would have turned it over to you, Michael. No,
really.
But I do, in seconding it, I do want to say both to my colleagues and certainly to any members of the public, we think every day at the SBWMA and Rethink Waste how to keep costs down and be efficient. And I won't bore people now with a number of steps that we've taken to do that, and both also in Burlingame, frankly. So we are very, very mindful of not raising rates or being careful about how much we have to raise rates. Having said that, there are some big mandates coming down. There are big mandates coming down from Sacramento. And then also we're going through the 10-year contract is up for renewal and is being rebid. And, you know, I'm here to tell you early warning, the new contract bids from the private sector are much higher than they were 10 years ago. So we do our very best, and we're super mindful of trying to keep rates efficient, and we don't like price hikes any more than anybody. I just want to make that clear.
Perfect.
So anyway, it's a long way of seconding the motion.
Thank you. Thank you. It was important information. With that, we have a motion by Councilmember Colson, a second by Vice Mayor Brownrigg. If we could have a roll call, please.
Councilmember O'Brien,
Yes.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes, with a comment on the motion. I also just want to thank staff and all the presentations for those members of the public who may not have followed our studies leading up to this in last year. There's a lot of analysis that went into it, and we can always put you in touch with some of those recordings to see the thought process behind these. Yes.
Councilmember Coulson,
Yes, ditto.
Vice Mayor Brownrigg,
Yes.
Mayor Ortiz.
Yeah, yes, 3-2. And thank you all. With that, then we move on to staff reports and communications. And I don't see any, so I'm going to move forward with council committee activities, reports, and announcement. Colleagues, I don't see any hands being raised. So how about future agenda items? Do you want to bring anything up today? And having none, then we will have acknowledgement of your agenda, agendas, packets, and meeting minutes for the Planning Commission, Traffic Safety and Parking Commission, Beautification Commission, Parks and Recreation Commission, and the Library Board of Trustees are available online at www.burlingame.org. And with that, we will move on to adjournment. And I do have, if you will indulge me, I do have a member of the, there's a member of our Burlingame family who was an employee who is Kevin Kelty, and I'm going to read you what the Director of Public Works sent me. Kevin has been the independent arborist for the city of Burlingame for over a decade. He was well respected in the tree industry. His knowledge and expertise with the trees in Burlingame was particularly unique in that his prior years. He climbed and trimmed many of the city trees while working for Main Tree Service, including the trees on Easton Drive and Burlingame Avenue. He intimately knew many trees that he was called upon regularly by the city arborist to provide reports for individuals and or groups of trees, and aided in collaboration with the other arborists for special projects. His reports on the city's large eucalyptus trees are the basis for the city's tree maintenance program and established baselines for individual trees that are now in use to determine the health and decline of specific trees. Kevin was also an active member of the Lions Club and president for many terms. He gave back to his community with endless volunteer hours, including barbecuing for many city events and rec activities. His experience, knowledge, and expertise will be sorely missed and a great loss to the tree industry in the city of Burlingame. So with that, we could have a minute of silence for Mr. Kelty. And with that, thank you, everybody. Good meeting, and we are adjourned. Good night.
Right.